It's been a huge privilege to be here at Citywork in Dublin. Our message today is all about the pressing need to combine work and family, which here in Ireland is becoming quite a key part of the talent agenda and the diversity agenda. So I had colleagues from LinkedIn. I had Sarah Noppy from LinkedIn and Bevin Parr from Bank of New York Mellon in Ireland. And we were talking about all the kind of tips and tricks for making sure that work and family can be combined successfully. That's, of course, including the services that My Family Care provides to these organisations, but also all sorts of other practical things people can do. And we found that the audience hadn't really heard about backup care in any great detail here. So this was a real opportunity to talk about some of those practical ways in which employers can support their working parents and carers. So hi everybody, and a very warm welcome to this session on the urgency of making work and family work here in Ireland. Thank you so much for choosing this session. Really great to have you with us. I am Jennifer Liston-Smith and I work with My Family Care, biggest provider of family-friendly solutions in the UK and Ireland. And I head up the thought leadership activities that we do, and I also head up the coaching and consultancy services. So it's my pleasure today to try and unpack this issue a little bit for you. So I'll be setting some context for the first few minutes of why this is a pressing matter now and what are some of the things that we can do to enable our workforce to combine work and family successfully. But my greatest pleasure in this session is to have two colleagues sitting alongside me who are really going to be able to share insights from inside making this work within organisations. So to my direct side here, I have Sarah Noppy from LinkedIn. So Sarah, your career has spanned working at Mattel. You have a set of Barbie dolls to prove it. And now LinkedIn, where you have a wide-ranging responsibility for comp and bends. You've got a degree from Michigan State University, so you're very much an international perspective that you bring to this area. So great to have you with us.
Thank you.
And also Bevin Parr from BNY, Bank of New York Mellon. Here in Dublin, you're heading up quite a broad comp and bends remit. And your background involves veterinary pharmaceuticals and also working with Citigroup prior to Bank of New York Mellon. And your degree from Trinity Dublin focused on maths and physics, so you love nothing more than a spreadsheet, I gather. So great to have you with us, Bevin, as well. So we aim to have a conversation together, unpacking this topic, but also to engage with you. We might run a couple of polls in a moment, so if you have a smartphone handy, I'm going to invite you to go to a site called menti.com, MENTI.com. in just a moment and just vote on a couple of things so we can get a bit of a picture of where we're coming from in the room. Equally, we hope to take a couple of questions towards the end, but if you do have something on your mind as we go along and you really want to raise that, whether it's a pressing question or whether it's something you want to challenge about what we're saying, please do feel free, just raise a hand and I'll keep an eye out and engage with you as we go along so that we keep focused on what you want to get from this session. So, within My Family Care, our experience comes from both 10 years of partnering with leading employers who are really trying to make the whole combination of work and family work for working parents and working carers. So over a decade of doing that has given us very much a kind of growing set of services to meet those needs, but also the research that we carry out ourselves and that we stay involved in, wider research carried out by public bodies and universities and so on. So we've got quite a finger on the pulse, both in the UK, in Ireland, and increasingly globally, on all aspects of work and family. But having the client experience alongside enables you to hear what that journey is actually like for people that are putting it into practice as well in the day-to-day. If you visit my colleagues, and Oliver Daniels here at the front will be definitely on the stand straight after this. If you visit my colleagues Oliver and Karina, and we've got Garrod here as well, who's our local contact, on our stand in the exhibition centre after this, you'll be able to pick up a copy of this sort of infographic sheet that perhaps will help you make the case as to why it's a pressing issue in Ireland now to pay attention to the combination of work and family. There are various factors. You know, youngest population in Europe, coming of age into the parenting years is one of the things that we're all increasingly aware of, aren't we? And I know with LinkedIn, we're kind of growing towards the age, I think you've got an average age of about 33, 34 now, and about 38 at BNY Mellon. So around a third of the working population is now in the parenting years of 25 to 44. And the population over 65 has grown by 20% in the last few years. So the whole kind of population skew, if you like, is moving up in terms of age. And that means not only more parents, working parents in the workplace, but also more working carers, people with adult dependents, with elder care responsibilities. So we as employers, in an environment in which there is a competition for talent, a skills shortage, low unemployment, so people have choice, people will move to where there's better culture, better provision. There is a competition for talent, and we need to see those who have dependents as part of our commitment to talent attraction and retention, as well as our commitment to diversity. And you know, there's enough evidence out there that diverse workforces have better governance, better decision making, better reflection of the populations that we're serving. Well-being parents and carers at work brings a set of knowledge and skills that we can't really do without as employers. So there's a growing picture there around the demand among the workforce to pay attention to this. And so savvy employers are really making sure that that happens. And if the carrot of talent retention weren't enough, there's the stick of legislation following hot on its heels. So we know that we have the gender pay gap. We've been experiencing that in the UK in the last couple of years, and it really has been a very positive development for organisations to be required to reveal the gender pay gap in the workforce, to be able to identify in each quartile of pay in the organisation the representation of men and women, to see whether women are progressing through to the higher paid jobs, has been pretty much universally embraced as a positive development that's shone a light on conversations that needed to happen. So that's on its way through, isn't it? I know in the Oireachtas it was June last year that the outline bill went through, so it's on its way. I don't think we know exactly when, but it's imminent, it's pending.
I think it's by the end of this year.
Yes, yeah. So sometime soon there will be that reporting requirement. And one of the things that we've learnt in the UK is it's really important not only to report the figures, obviously compliance is important, have to do that, but to be able to provide a narrative to the outside world and to our own employees as to what that gender pay gap means, what we're doing about it, what's our action plan to address it. So it's an opportunity as an employer to communicate our intent to be inclusive. So that's coming. Shared parental leave, again, we've had that in the UK for about 4 years now. Relatively low take-up, but those who have taken it up and employers that have embraced it have found that it's leveled the playing field. So instead of care being a women's issue, childcare in particular, it's much more of a people's issue now. So, you know, men, women, people of any gender looking to share in the care of a child have much more flexibility to do that. And I know that you will have the shared maternity leave rights coming in. So that's going to be another pressure to show your inclusivity as an employer. And finally, flexible working. In the UK, we've been through that journey of making flexible working rights to request flexible working available to working parents, then to working carers. Now everybody within the UK who has 26 weeks service has a right to request flexible working. The employer must consider that. I know here again the only sort of regulatory pressure is to consider that for people returning from some form of parental leave. But again, we know leading employers are making flexibility a part of the culture and a part of the way that you just deliver. So these are all factors which will put pressure on the organisations that are slower catching up. But it may well be that you guys are already there ahead of the curve by nature of being interested in this area. And in fact, it'd be great to hear your experience. So, as I mentioned, if you have a smartphone handy and you're connected, if you wouldn't mind going to menti.com, menti.com, And there's a little code there. It'll ask you to put that in. So it's 663616. So menti.com 663616. And if you wouldn't mind just taking part in a couple of polls, one of them asks you what's driving your interest in this family-friendly agenda. So there's a few different options for you to choose from. And again, it'll just give us a picture of where we're coming from in the room. And also where you are generally on the family-friendly journey. That's the second question that you'll come across there. And we're saying on a scale of 1 to 10, if 1 is really starting out on the journey, just kind of getting started, just exploring the needs of your population, and 10 is you've got great policies, but not only policies, you've got a whole culture that recognises and supports working parents and carers. You have benefits in place, services, maybe networks, that sort of thing. So that would be a 10 out of 10 on the scale. So we'll come back in a moment to looking at those votes. Hi. Sure, it's 663616. Have I remembered that right from the previous slide? Great. Thanks for asking. Thanks for taking part in that. So before we get more in depth into the conversation with Sarah and Bevin here, just to outline, we, having worked in this area with loads of employers in the last decade, we've identified that you will get an exponentially better result if you combine efforts in these three interlocking areas. So we're always looking, of course, at the culture. So the cultural side, having leadership that's bought in is great, and sometimes that's your role to be making the case, making the business case. This is a talent matter, this is a diversity issue, this is a way of being a leading employer. You know, we want to go after awards for being a great place to work, or great for women, or great for dads, generally just a leading employer winning awards. So making that case to senior management so the culture is inclusive and encouraging to working parents and carers. But equally line managers. I mean, how often do we find that line managers just, you know, we're busy people, aren't we, as managers, don't know what to say. Somebody declares they're becoming a parent or a carer, and line managers even sometimes don't say anything because they're afraid of saying the wrong thing. Have you come across that? Or they do say the wrong thing, you know, oh, not another in my team. You know, oh, shame you have to be off in October. Well, you know, that is not building a really inclusive, encouraging culture. But it can happen if people are not prepared and not empowered, if you like. So one of the things that's well worth you doing, you know, if you're looking for low-cost and no-cost solutions, is just setting out a few guidelines for managers, a kind of checklist of what to go through. You know, here's the policy, but also when somebody declares that they're becoming a parent or carer, you know, here's some resources you can point them to, or even saying in those guidelines, don't forget to smile and say congratulations, you know, it's worth saying. So some guidance, some cultural development for leadership and management is always really important in the mix. Looking at the practical side there, that will entail things like advice and services around supporting care, practical enablers of combining work and family, and we'll certainly come back to that. And then on the emotional development well-being side, that's partly about things like coaching people to engage leadership skills alongside the need and wish to balance work and family. It's not about treating people as if it's a deficit to have family, that we can fall into this mistake of talking about supporting working parents and carers. Often they're some of the most skilled, engaged, loyal and determined people because, you know, they're very committed to achieving 100% at work and home. So it's often about engaging that group of people and reminding them that they have the skills and reminding them on how to influence and negotiate for what's needed. So those are three areas that we know will give you a kind of extra impact if you combine action in each of those areas. But coming right back to how we get started in this area, because that's what kind of success might look like when we get there. So we'll talk first to Sarah about LinkedIn, and the journey, Sarah, has been quite a kind of recent development, hasn't it? You saw your population kind of growing up. Tell us about how it began.
Yeah, so every 6 months we do an employee voice survey, which we call EVS. So if you hear me talking about EVS, that's what it is. And one of the comments that kept frequently coming up was, I'm about to have my first child. What does LinkedIn do? How do I maintain a work and a life balance? I've never had a child before. How do you support me in this? And about the time our demographics were about 31 years old, and we're about 60% non-Irish nationals at LinkedIn. So a lot of our own support networks weren't in Ireland. So trying to figure out, well, we want to retain our employees, we really want to attract them, we want to have them stay in Ireland, so what can we do? And then started to look around into the marketplace to see what it was.
Sure, and you've got quite a big population here. You've got about 1,200 people in Ireland versus 250 in the UK. So
Yeah.
This is a really important centre for you to set the cultural message, isn't it?
Yeah, LinkedIn is our international headquarters. So the biggest population is here. You know, we're growing. We want to be, 2,500 in about 2 years. So that is tremendous growth. And, again, what can we do that makes LinkedIn the place that you want to go, where you can feel like you can have a family, where you can have your second child, which is what our population is now. 2.5 years ago, they were on their first child, and now they're on their second child. So again, it was just how can we really support the changing demographic shifts of our employees.
And that was quite proactive, wasn't it? You don't have a retention issue. This was about continuing to be the most attractive employer.
Yeah, we weren't losing anyone at the time. Again, it was just a similarity that was coming up in our EVSs, and we saw the need that we were going to have to fill. And so, again, we were very proactive in that. It is a great benefit that we offer. I do have to say that our returning moms is fantastic. I would say maybe 97% returning moms come back to LinkedIn. So yeah, it is something that, again, we are very proactive about.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. So, Bhaveen, you were looking across at the UK to some extent,
Yes,
weren't you? And had to make the case for putting things in place in Ireland.
Yeah, we have this benefit in the UK, and our demographic, we have our average age is. Oh, is that better? Can everybody hear me? Okay. Our demographic, our average age is 38, and we're spread in Cork, Wexford, and Dublin. And we did feel that we wanted to replicate the success of My Family Care in the UK. And our senior manager bought into this. Our country exec was very, very open, and just when I presented the proposal, he just went, yes. So that was great. We want to be seen as a family-friendly employer. And we know that it's an employees market at the moment in Dublin, because it's such a great location to work in Ireland as well.
I remember you saying to me, Bhaveen, that Joe Duffy, the country executive, had said that family friendly was the right thing to do for BNY Mellon, and that it was a kind of seamless part of diversity which you wanted to show a lead on. And
also, family nowadays is not, the definition of family is not the traditional definition. It's a blended, it's also elder people, younger people. It's so different. So we wanted to be there and be open to be, an approachable employer.
Great, thanks. So, please do, yeah.
I'm just interested to know, you're both talking about family friendly, kind of specifically what kind of initiatives did you introduce that was different?
Great question. We're going to, on this slide here, which we might as well go through first, then the next slide will give you the chance to talk about the wider programs that you've put in place. So this is part of it, and then there's this kind of policies and wider programs. So great question, we'll definitely flesh that out over these next two slides. So part of it, and this is, again, if you're looking for kind of tips that you can go and apply, you may well have already done this, but having a one-stop shop is quite a good starting point, because it shows the will to provide services for parents and carers. So some of you may achieve that through your intranet and making sure that you point to all of the services and benefits and resources for parents and carers in the one place. Both LinkedIn and Bank of New York Mellon have put in place the Work and Family Space portal, which is a service provided by My Family Care, so it gives you that kind of ready access, if you like. So this is a one-stop shop. So part of what you've put in place is the work and family space. And Sarah, you were interested in the way that that caters to different life stages, weren't you?
Yeah, so again, part of the LinkedIn philosophy is to be inclusive. So understanding that the majority of our employees were just having the family, there was also the members of the LinkedIn family who were caring for elderly families, their parents, and then also again being 60% non-Irish nationals, you know, what happens if you break a leg and you need someone to come look after yourself? Again, you know, we don't want to lose our talents, so what can we do? And that was the great thing about My Family Care, was they had the self-care, they had the elder care, and then they also had the child care. And so it really ticked all of the boxes that we were looking for. And so we were able to roll out this very inclusive benefit. I do have to say the most popular aspect of it is the child minding, the child care, the child information. But it's also great for us to be able to say, well, we haven't forgotten about what stage you are in your life, and even if you're not in this stage, there is something for you in this benefit.
Sure. So one of the key pieces that's accessible through the work and family space, which we thought you may not all know about, is backup care or emergency care provision. So that means when normal arrangements fall through, which could be childcare provision, or it could be elder care, adult dependent care, or a sudden need, you know, a family member coming out from hospital or whatever, that there is access to emergency care that can be put in place pretty swiftly. Bevine, I know you've found it used by your employees in quite a range of circumstances.
Yeah, I suppose the majority is the emergency childcare, you know, where you can't, you know, the creche won't take your child because it's got a cough, or the creche is closed. Depends over Christmas, because we work 24/7 almost. And also if your childminder is unavailable at short notice, so we found really good feedback from our employees on this service.
How many of you here have heard of backup care provision or are aware of anything like that? Okay, yeah, we thought that might be quite a new concept. It's been well established in the UK. We've been providing for over a decade. And Oliver, how many days or hours of backup care have we fulfilled in that decade?
Well over 2 million actually.
Yeah.
And last year alone over 400,000, closer to 500,000 in fact. And
Yeah.
it's continued to take off. And you know, we've been here as well since 2010 in fact, with a few particularly forward-thinking organisations and more coming forward very quickly.
Yeah.
A real journey of growth here as well.
And it's been really interesting in Ireland, because I remember having conversations a few years ago, maybe, you know, over 5 years ago, with people saying, well, look, people have family. You know, if childcare arrangements fall down, there is somebody down the street who can step in. But increasingly, as Sarah says, with the mobile international population, and Bevine, you were saying with, you know, it may be that's the case in Wexford, but in Dublin, your population doesn't necessarily have parents, grandparents.
We do have a diverse workforce in Dublin,
yeah,
as well.
Yeah. So it's worth knowing that this is a rising trend to provide and enable employees whose care has fallen down to resource that at the last minute. There's a question over there.
Sorry, I haven't heard it before, so I just want to be clear. You mean that someone would come and if it's childcare, mind the child, someone turns up and does it?
Yeah, I mean, it's both. It can be a professional who comes to your home, you know, and it can be set up within half an hour's notice, that kind of emergency arrangement. So let's say you could even work from home in that setting with, you know, somebody's in the next room. If it was the first time you used it, you weren't quite sure about it, you can sit in the next room and have that crucial client call or, you know, sales pitch that you have to do or whatever it is that you must do that day. But equally, there may be somebody whose child is in a creche, maybe working 4 days a week. Perhaps they have some flexible or part-time arrangement. But, you know, 1 week they just have to do something on that Wednesday when they're not normally working. They're willing to do it. And so our system also, with some very clever dynamics, picks up the slack, so the spare places. And it could even be that person's own creche is on our system. So we can pick up the slack within that provider on a day they wouldn't normally use it, which is much harder to achieve as an individual. So that's a little bit of the sort of nuts and bolts of how that may work. And it's also the case for adult dependents and elder care. We have a network of providers who can be called upon. So quite a novel concept perhaps for many of you. And one of the things that often happens at the outset is people say, well, how will people trust that provision at such short notice? But I think the feedback that comes, the fact that we have obviously really cast iron quality standards in the first place is reassuring. But I think people just grow to kind of learn from colleagues, don't they, that it works?
It's recommendations and word of mouth. And you can always say, if you know if an employee has used it and somebody had some queries, just put them together and, let them share their experience and how they felt.
Yeah, we have a group called Parents at LinkedIn, PAL, and when we rolled out this wonderful benefit, no one was utilizing it. And I think there was this just fear to leave a child with someone that they didn't know, that no one in the company had used before. So I sat down with the leadership team of the PAL group and was like, please, you don't even have to leave your house, just work and have them there, or just go down for lunch and come back. It'll only be 30 minutes, but I really need you guys to be the advocates here. And so they did, and Aoife came up to me the next day and she was just like, it was like she was Mary Poppins. She was like, my daughter doesn't like anyone, and she was clinging to this woman's leg. And, it's like having stories like that really resonate, right? And so then the word kind of spread and spread and spread and spread. And so now there is a comfort, there is a trust with the My Family Care Network. They know that they're going to get that professional, but it did take that little nudge just to get across that threshold.
And it's important how you communicate it internally. It's not to insist that people would work in every circumstance. There are genuine times when people just obviously need to be with family. But, the third day that a child has chicken pox, it might be excluded from a setting, from a creche, but if you could get somebody into your home to care appropriately for that child while you attend a virtual meeting or whatever, it's magic. Great, thanks for outlining that. Does that answer the question? Cool, thank you very much. So coming back to your question as well, so part of it is the work and family space with access to backup care that both these organisations have put in place, but there are other things around that. So Sarah, LinkedIn's Family First approach has a number of different elements, including some pretty generous policies.
Yeah, so again, we kind of entered into this Family First, is what we call it, Family First journey about 3 years ago now. The introduction of My Family Care was definitely part of that. The introduction of our Parents at LinkedIn group was part of that. We do coaching for managers, of people who are going out on maternity leave, as well as for those who are returning from maternity leave. We have a flexible allowance that we call Perk Up that will contribute towards the cost of childcare. So, there's a different kind of plethora of things that we would really use to focus on our Family First. But the core of it for us is the My Family Care, because of the work-life platform that they have. It's a great resource, right? So, I think you have also, my child can't sleep, can I talk to someone, right? And these are the things that are really, really kind of taken up in our company, even if it's not just the child minding.
That's a really good point, because I think a lot of people are coming to the conclusion in terms of HR, there's a lot of tech out there, a lot of AI, a lot of services online. But I think the combination of tech plus people seems to be the way ahead. So using tech in a smart way, whether it's, picking up the availability of care in the system and people accessing webinars around, how do I improve my personal brand as a working parent? How do I work my networks? But sometimes nothing quite beats talking to a person. So there's the Speak to an Expert service. And we actually have a network of people that are experts on everything from, as you say, getting sleep, whether that's ourselves as adults or our children. Whether it's, we get a lot of inquiries, people saying, sadly mum's had a diagnosis of dementia, what next? And that might be what next from a benefits point of view. How do I navigate the care system? What does it all mean? But equally, it could be, you know, my brother's based a little bit further away. How do we share the responsibility between us? How do we make this work as a family? So these are people that are really looking for advice, and they need it quick. You know, otherwise it becomes stressful. It's a big distraction. So, you know, and again, this is something you may be able to provide internally. You may be able to signpost people to resources. We do it through the Speak to an Expert service, but it's an important aspect, perhaps, of your working carer and parent policy to think about where can we direct people who have queries. Because if you can give people fairly swift advice, then the stress kind of goes away and the distraction from work goes away. So, in terms of BNY Mellon's wider approach, Vivian, what else do you have in place?
We have launched, well, in the UK we first rolled out the Parental Buddy Programme, is where we sort of buddy up. In the start it was mums going off on maternity leave with somebody who had returned, just to give them an idea of what to expect when they return. And then we rolled that out in Ireland, but we actually called it Parental Buddy, so it includes dads too. So they, if you let HR know you're going on maternity leave or paternity leave, they will send you a little form and a link to say, you know, would you like to avail of this service, and give you a list of buddies. So you can pick your buddy. It's operated by our women's network. They look after all the admin piece. So they will go and people will buddy up and have, you know, face-to-face meetings or calls just to see how they're doing before they go off and leave, and then when they come back, and, you know, tips and tricks if you're a mom trying to get out the door in half an hour with a baby, or they're there for you on your first day back when you're just a little bit worried that, you know, how's the baby doing without you, and the same for dads too. So that's been really, really good and really accepted.
I think that's a really important point that you're touching on there, Vivian, just the whole normalising of this transition. You know, I know for myself, I've got 2 teenage sons now, so it's a little while since I was in that transition, but every step of the way as a parent, we can feel out of our depths, and we often feel that we're the only one. You know, am I the only idiot who can't quite get it together, you know, and am I managing to keep the mask in place so nobody sees this? And just knowing there are other people who have struggled and gaining tips, very powerful to have that from internal colleagues. So we did the training of the buddies, you know, quite light touch, guidelines developed around things like, you know, confidentiality, you know, setting that up between you as a buddy pair, your expectations on, you know, the privacy of that conversation. You're setting up expectations around how often you'll meet so that you don't overcommit, or you've got to get out if there just isn't the chemistry, that you can come back and ask for a different pair. I don't think people do, because I think they generally get on. But, you know, setting up a few guidelines is really wise. And then a bit of training to just, again, it's normalising. It identifies some of the key themes that people will experience through the transition, so that buddy doesn't feel it's just like, oh, it's down to me to be the expert. You've had some guidance as to what the themes are. You've sat with a bunch of peers who are also volunteering as buddies. You've got an instant network yourself, plus you get the kind of satisfaction and the recognition for putting yourself forward as a buddy. So it's an excellent scheme to put in place. And again, it can be done quite low cost, low key in terms of resource internally. You do need a bit of admin to do that matching and to kind of keep track of it and keep a little bit of momentum. But it's a fantastic way of leveraging your internal capability. Flexible working back in New York Mellon is also quite established, isn't it? People have quite a bit of flexibility.
Yes, we do. We have work from home, and also because of our different clients we service worldwide. So you have early starts, early finishes, late starts, late finishes. So, you know, we are fairly flexible there.
Absolutely.
And it's very important.
Yeah, so, you know, flexibility is great for everybody. Increasingly, people want to combine work with all sorts of other demands, but working parents and carers particularly will massively benefit from a little bit of flexibility, whether that's getting away at 3 o'clock on a Friday to take mum or dad to a hospital appointment. People will usually over-deliver in return for that, you know, make sure that they pick up on what they haven't been able to do there and then. So, you know, it's very much a trust-based relationship in which the focus is on performance, not on the FaceTime of who's sitting where and when. You know, trusting people, being clear about what's to deliver, and then trusting people as adults to deliver that. Goes across every person, but it's particularly valued by parents and carers. So again, that's the thing that you can do internally, is promote the possibility of flexible working to these groups in particular. And another great thing is to find role models, or as they're sometimes called these days, real models. People who are good examples of making things work. People that are willing to tell their stories. And you might put that forward in a newsletter, you might put it on the intranet, you might run a little panel of people in a lunchtime session. Especially if you have a network like Parents at LinkedIn, you might host a session as part of that. And just get people to tell their stories, you know, and discuss some of the challenges. But, you know, this is me, this is my situation. By working from home on a Friday, I get a longer day where I can work, actually, because I'm not commuting in. But it also means that when I stop, I'm there for family. And, you know, just getting people to exchange some of their experiences can be really, really powerful. So, we talked a little bit earlier about the Speak to an Expert service and the way that people draw upon that. The other things that happen to be in the work and family space, so, you know, access to advice with people to deliver that is important. But other things in there are blog pieces, newsletters according to life stages. And Sarah, you mentioned the importance of people having information tailored to their life stage, didn't you, earlier?
Yeah, it's been great. You know, when you sign up, you can say what stage of life that you're in, and as you're progressing from like the 3-year-old to 5-year-old stage, it'll grow with you. So instead of, you know, getting toddler articles, now you're getting into, okay, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, what does that look like? So again, it's a great resource, especially when we're in the, you know, day and age of you can get anything now. It is a great resource to have, to say, oh, I'm in this situation now, and it's a platform that they can have and they have access to.
And again, from your point of view, I mean, obviously we'd be delighted if you put this in place, but, you know, from your point of view of what you could do independently as well, some of that arises from sharing stories. So, you know, again, blog pieces by people internally, if you were to develop a parents network, a family network, a carers network, and encourage people to blog and share stories, possibly make a place for that on your intranet or somewhere else. You know, this is the kind of thing that creates the culture that says this culture recognizes the challenges that we all face. So in the work and family space, quite a few of our blog pieces come from the service users. So they are feeding in blogs with their own experience. So you may read something from your colleagues through those newsletters. But again, that is, of course, something you can do internally if you can make the resources to pull that together. But within the work and family space, there are also webinars. This is another great thing. It creates the backbone of a network, potentially, to have webinars where you can either get people in a room to broadcast it together, or obviously they've got the flexibility of listening into those on the go. On all sorts of topics, you know, not only parenting, practical skills, carers, but all about combining work and family. So all the skills that we need to influence and navigate in the workplace. So, as we said, it's about the blend. It's about making sure that we cover all the bases. So you might want to think about going away from this session. What will you put into place? What could you do? What could you leverage that you're already doing? Maybe you're already doing something around flexible working, but you could promote it more to a parents network or a carers network, get people together in the room. So what can you do to enhance what you're already doing? Or obviously what can you add in terms of any missing pieces? I'd love to see where we are on the Mentimeter. Have you seen the results? So, who's got it showing at your end before I get back to it? Anybody got the results visible? Okay, let me just see if I can bring this up. I'm having to resubmit to the Wi-Fi. Here we go. Oh, it's driving your interest. Download results. It looks like quite a... on the family-friendly thing, we've got, on the scale of 1 to 10, we're collectively at 3.7, so some way to go, potentially. And in terms of what's driving the family-friendly agenda, we had 32 people responding, and it's not showing me the results. So if you come to our stand afterwards, I will make sure that I check out the results, if you're interested, and make sure that between the 32 of you, we bring up, it's just showing me the number that responded, apologies, so we will give you that result. But we're at 3.7 out of 10 collectively in terms of the 0 to 10 or 1 to 10 family friendly.